The Switch OLED was revealed just over a week ago to a very wide variety of responses, so I wanted to take a moment, now that the dust has settled a little bit, to talk to some fellow YouTubers and really see how everyone's feeling about this now. So I hit up Shank Mods, Bob from Wolfden, and Beat 'em Ups, each of which I think kind of had very different thoughts going into and thoughts afterwards about this, and just kind of see how we're all feeling.
My immediate reaction was excitement. You know, there's a new Switch. I woke up to it, and I was really excited in bed as I was looking at it. But the more I thought about it, the more I read it, and the more I compared it to what I wanted out of a new Switch revision, the more disappointed I became.
Because they really didn't have much more options. They wanted to improve the hardware.
Maybe a better battery life, maybe something that'll run stuff like Breath of the Wild a little more stably. But just like we saw with the new Nintendo 3DS, it got a slight processor bump. It was slightly more powerful, but still played the exact same games.
It's funny, when the announcement happened, the reason I found out about it was because I was up late the night before, passed out in my bed, sleeping in, and I get a call from Shank, which never happens. I have never talked to the phone on that guy. I'm not even sure why he asked my phone number. And I didn't answer the call because it's like what woke me up. And then I just see my home screen saying like, wake up, new Switch revealed. And I was like, oh.
I wish someone had called me. I woke up to nothing but fan DMs on Twitter.
Well, I wake up to that, and then initially I'm like, oh, it's happening. And then the follow-up text was, I was right. And I knew his stance the whole time was like, oh, it's only gonna be OLED. Like, it's it. That's all they're gonna do. So I was like, damn it.
There's a few reasons, but one of the reasons why I was reasonably confident that we weren't gonna get a new, I didn't think we're gonna get a Switch Pro model, at least anytime in the near future, is because right now there's a massive worldwide chip shortage. Like we've seen it a lot with graphics cards, and that's been because of the crypto thing. And it's much more complicated than just the pandemic and stuff like that. It's a big issue that could last a very long time.
I was mostly surprised by the timing of it. I was completely caught off guard, like I'm sure most people were. I woke up in a cold sweat to all of this news and everybody accosting me that there's a new Switch. But in terms of what the actual news was, I wasn't surprised in the slightest. It was pretty much exactly what I thought it was going to be, which was really just a screen refresh.
So you were pretty convinced we were probably going to get some kind of spec bump? Like, were you expecting?
I was way too convinced. And maybe it was partially my own brain and history with Nintendo, knowing what Nintendo has done in the past, looking at things like the new 3DS, and knowing that while this is their home console and they haven't really done an official, like, PS4 Pro level of home console improvement in the past, they have merged this console with their handheld. So we've seen their handhelds have those new spec bumps. And again, I was not expecting anything like 4K unless it was artificial, but I was expecting a bump just out of my own brain. And then when Bloomberg started reporting on it happening, it sort of just solidified it. And I was like, well, yeah, of course it is.
So I'm interested in what you thought. Like, what were your predictions before this big announcement?
The only thing that I'm not saying this in some kind of like, oh, I was right kind of thing. The only rumor that I felt 100% about was the OLED. Everything else, while I didn't completely disbelieve the 4K, there was a part of me that was like, oh, like I could maybe see like 4K DLSS being a thing. Like, sure, like that's a possibility. But I wasn't, the only rumor that was going around a lot that I was like, oh, this makes sense is OLED, because that can be traced back to they're ordering screens. Like there's a paper trail to this that makes sense, right? It's not the usual like, oh, this guy working at this place said this to this guy. And even when some of that stuff is based on initially correct information, plans change, games of telephone happen where stuff gets changed. Like, it's just, I'm always more skeptical with anything that doesn't have like a, look, there are receipts, they bought a thing, you know?
All I have ever wanted out of a better Switch is for it to play Nintendo's own games. Because a lot of Nintendo's own games struggle. I mean, the perfect example is Hyrule Warriors. I always go back to it, but we're down in single digits for that game. And we look at the 3DS, that game at Hyrule Warriors that did not perform very well. And then they introduced the new 3DS, and Hyrule Warriors was actually used in the marketing for look how much better Hyrule Warriors plays on the new 3DS. We actually get more than one enemy on a screen now at a time. So I saw that lining up so perfectly, like, oh, history is repeating itself. And even now I'm playing Monster Hunter Stories 2, which just came out, and it chugs.
Yeah.
It chugs, dude, it chugs. Even in, like, the home world, I swear it dips down to about 15 frames.
Yeah.
It can't play its own games.
The whole screen thing makes a lot more sense because we always hear that Nintendo's buying a whole bunch of parts, and most of the time when that happens, it's something like a processor, and then people go, oh, they're using this new Tegra chip that's capable of 4K, so that means this new Switch is going to be 4K, and that's not, we know that that's not necessarily true. We know that Nintendo usually purposely underpowers all of their stuff. So something like a screen, you can't really, it's a screen.
Yeah.
You're not like, they're not overclocking or underclocking a screen. It's a screen.
Right, it's
so
exactly.
we know that if they're going to use that, we know what it is. If it's something like a processor, or oh, this new Switch is going to be USB-C, that means the dock can connect to a graphics card, and this thing's going to be super powerful. We know that that's just not how Nintendo works.
Yeah, no, and that's definitely the issue, right? Because like it's one thing with port struggle, because it's like, all right, like were you ambitious with this port? Is it an issue of like, you know, the dev actually getting the most out of the hardware or whatever? But when it's like a first party or at least an exclusive thing, it's like, guys.
You can't play your own games. Like it gets a little undefendable at a point. It gets a little sad at a point. Like we've all defended the Switch come hell or high water over the last so many years. One of the biggest ones was, does the Switch have any games? And that was nice to actually put our foot down and be like, look at all the games it's got now, told you. But something that it always comes back to is power and what the Switch can do and what it's capable of. And it doesn't need to play all these AAA games that are coming out. It doesn't need to play the biggest, hottest releases. It just doesn't. What it needs to do is play its own games capably.
Yeah.
And it can't sometimes.
One thing I was wrong about that I didn't put any money on this, but I was almost willing to. I could have sworn they were going to go with calling it the XL. Like it just seemed so like standard by Nintendo, and I was shocked. OLED is such a terrible name, by the way, in my opinion.
No. You got to say the full name. Nintendo Switch OLED model.
Yeah, OLED model. Yep. I can't tell you how many people I saw who aren't into this kind of stuff, the tech side of things, who were just like, I don't even know what that means. Like I had to look up OLED and I still don't really get it.
So I was beating the drum that they were going to call this new Nintendo Switch. The new Nintendo Switch, just like they did with the new 3DS, which would have also been a terrible name, but I just thought that's what they would have done.
Oh yeah, and if you're a docked player, there is no reason to upgrade. I mean, I'm primarily handheld, so I'm like, oh, OLED screen, like that sounds great. Like I actually am very excited about that. And I even said that when I did my initial reaction video, was like, in a lot of ways, this system is more directly competing with Switch Lite for people who got that as like a handheld, and now they're like, oh, maybe I do want a dock. Oh, OLED screen. Oh, it's bigger. Like, there's a lot more reasons with a portable focus that makes this interesting, whereas that's really where I understand a lot of the salt that happened is anyone who is primarily docked, we have now had 2 refreshes that offer you nothing.
Yeah.
Like, built-in
and a lot of people are looking for like some sort of like graphical overhaul or something, and I don't see Nintendo doing anything like that in the near future.
Yeah.
And, you know, I think the new OLED looks really nice, but I think people are also overstating how much better an OLED is going to look.
That's funny because I feel like it's the opposite.
Really?
I think OLED makes a big difference. I mean, obviously, OLED as a tagline by itself isn't everything because, like, there's other stuff that goes into a display's quality. So, like, we actually have to see it in person to really get it. But OLED's awesome. I don't think, now to be clear, I don't think it's worth spending a whole $350 all over again if you already own a Switch. I don't think it's worth that much of a price.
I don't think it's worth the extra $50, period.
Yeah.
It to me, it seems like this was supposed to replace the original Switch, and they just decided, well, we're selling so many Switches, so why would we replace the Switch? And we probably should have sold the Switch for more money because we're selling so many. It's such a good deal. We could have made a lot more money out of it if we just sold it for a little more. These other consoles are $500. Like, ours is a deal, but it doesn't have to be that good of a deal. Let's give them something a little more Let's give them a little bit extra and charge them a lot more and see what we can make out of it. And I think honestly, they're going to make a lot of money. I think that as a business decision is probably really good, but morally, I think it's a little messed up.
Yeah, and that's the question, right? Is that like, yes, having an OLED screen does bump up the part cost, but does it bump it up the full $50?
Yeah, and that's literally all they're adding, and they've had 4 years to figure out the manufacturing process of the original Switch, and it's literally the same thing, just with a cooler screen. So, yeah, it really shouldn't be that much more.
Yeah,
but
if they didn't want to do a Pro and they're set on this console being this console for whatever reason, maybe it's part shortage, maybe it's just to keep the buyers who just bought a Switch happy, whatever the excuse is, I get that completely, but don't bring out something that's essentially the same, that doesn't cost you any more to make, but then charge more for it. That's where it just seems a little sketch to me.
In my mind, the default thought here is, why isn't this just why does this not just simply replace the mainline model? Because there's literally nothing the mainline model offers over it at this point, other than a cheaper price tag, which they set.
Right.
Yeah, so I totally agree with you.
Nintendo has historically said that they're going to keep around the older models of stuff, and then they can it within the next year. Yeah. So it's possible that they're just going to can the original model, and now all of a sudden we've seen a price bump of the Switch.
So and then on that note, because something that I've seen a lot of people talk about, and this was literally like right after the OLED got revealed, both from people who I think are just still very strongly clinging to the idea of a true mid-cycle refresh, or whatever, a spec bump, whatever you want to call it. It's not going to be called Switch Pro. We all know that for sure.
Yes.
If there's anything we know about Switch,
we know that. I don't know if everybody knows that.
Because something I'm seeing a lot of people cling to, right, is comparing this less to Nintendo's home consoles and more to their handhelds. And specifically when you get the 3DS, the lineup is very similar right now, right? You've got the mainline one that's just the mid-price. You've got the more expensive one with the bigger screen. And then you have the cheaper one that drops features, 2DS to Switch Lite. The timeline isn't the exact same of what got released in what order, but that is the lineup now. So a lot of people are looking at that and then going like, okay, so are we going to get a new Switch then, like how we had new 3DS?
With the 3DS, I think it was, part of it was it was a different time. Like there was, if I understand correctly, the tech had moved a long way since then, and having the same chip for cheaper was just it just made sense. It was probably just like, oh, it's the same price to have this faster clock chip,
and there wasn't the competition and shortage issue that we have right now.
Yeah, and there wasn't the competition and shortage issue. And the one thing to consider is those things Nintendo did, because a lot of the stuff their visions and their ideas for it couldn't run on it without it. So, like, they ported over... I remember one of the exclusives for the new 3DS was the Xenoblade port. The Xenoblade Chronicles port. Yeah. Which I know that would not run on it. Yes. And the 3DS you can run SNES games on it with Homebrew, but it did not run it well. And the newer power gave it the advantage of, you can run SNES games. Yeah. So, if they want to port over a bunch of, like... if they want to do some future ports of like GameCube games and stuff, if they're going to take we're just going to emulate it approach rather than a full legitimate port, I could see those kind of things being exclusive.
The only conspiracy theory I subscribe to is that I think that this OLED Switch was supposed to happen in March.
Yeah, I'd buy that. I mean, I feel like I feel like anything that comes out anything that came out in the last like 9 months and everything that is coming out in the next year, all of it probably had different release date plans pre-COVID, right? Like a lot of so much stuff got impacted by the pandemic that nothing's coming out when it's supposed to.
COVID did set us back a year, which would line the timing up much better for all of this happening. If the OLED was a year ago, that would be more realistic, and then we could look at getting a new Switch in the next year. And you're right, we had like the 3DS XL before we had the new 3DS XL. In fact, with the handhelds, they got crazy. I mean, the DS had what, like 17,000 different revisions?
I don't see DLSS being like the current within like an update to current generation.
Mm-hmm.
I'd see something like that being next generation because Nintendo tends to use very matured technologies, and DLSS is pretty new. And it's got a lot of, and it has to be optimized for each game. You have to train it on each game, and
there's a requirement on the devs part too. It's not as simple as just flip a switch and it's active.
Yeah, it's not flip a switch, magic. Switch. Yeah, flip a NVIDIA Switch and magic perform.
I doubt we'll ever see 4K. It's highly possible that it's doable, but I don't see Nintendo ever actually doing it.
Yeah, unless it was actually a next-gen leap. Like at that point, because
I could see the next Switch 2, Super Switch, still love that name, being 4K, but nothing in this family of systems being actual 4K.
Yeah.
It's okay to just say you were wrong about things. Just say you thought that this would be 4K and it wasn't. It's fine. No one's gonna be mad. I mean, everybody is mad, but there'll be less. It's not like it's gonna get worse for you. You know, I saw Dave 2D's video on it, and he doesn't really talk about Nintendo that much, but he brought up a good point that this is the most the Switch has ever sold, like in the past year, and it would be really stupid of them to make a new console now, or like a new console generation, or something that would create like a whole lot of buyer's remorse for the people who had just bought it. Even if they had plans, this is what Dave 2D says, even if they had plans to make a next generation or 4K console, they should cancel those plans because they're still selling so many Switches. And I kind of agree with that.
Do you feel like at any point Nintendo releasing a new Switch Pro whatever separates or would upset previous owners or people who had just bought a Switch? Do you think that kind of drives a wedge in the Switch ecosystem? Because this is something that I debate on often with my audience, whether or not releasing new hardware like that hurts the people and the consumers that have supported Nintendo so far.
Yeah, well, first off, I mean, it's one of those things, right, where it depends a little bit on severity, right? Not everyone's picturing the same thing. You know?
Right.
Like, yeah, if it's a minor spec bump that evens out some frame rates and maybe there's like 2 new games where more or less you have to get it, I don't think people are going to care that hard. Maybe if one of those new games is like Breath of the Wild 3. I think the problem is sometimes when people talk about spec bump switches, they're picturing actual next-gen leap. And if that happened this soon, I do think that's a little early because of how much continued interest and how well sales are going on.
The reason, there's multiple reasons why I think, and I could go on tangents in different directions, but one of the biggest ones, just being on this side of content creation, is knowing that if I put Nintendo Switch Pro in the title of the video, it's going to be one of my most viewed videos I have made, no matter what it is. Which is why you see these channels go down these avenues of just constantly reporting on Switch Pro rumors and talking about it and getting hundreds and thousands of views. Because people want it, because people are interested, because people are invested and they want to see something happen no matter what it is. Like, the interest is clearly there. And that's just on the content creator side of things, but it just makes sense from a business standpoint. I mean, the new 3DS and all of that was very successful. You have PlayStation and Xbox, they keep doing, you know, pro models, like better versions of their consoles to sort of refresh it halfway along the lifespan. And the Switch is incredibly outdated at this point. It wasn't exactly top of the line console when it released, let alone now 5 years later. It's barely struggling to keep up with Nintendo's own ambitions and their own projects and their own first party games. So I think there's dire need for it, and I think people would definitely buy it, like beyond even me just saying, oh, I'll get it for my channel, like the OLED, like the 4K Switch or whatever you want to call it. And 4K is even, again, that's going extreme. I'm literally just talking about getting games to steady frame rates.
Yeah.
That's all I'm talking about. I don't even care about resolution as much as the frame rates. But I think there's definitely a market for that.
But Nintendo knows that that's not why we get this thing. We're not getting this thing because it's going to be a powerhouse. We're not getting this thing because multi-platform games are going to be like a great experience on it. We're getting it because the convenience of being able to just, oh, I gotta go on the subway now. Let me just keep playing my game, and then you just keep playing the damn game.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the thing, right? It's like there's plenty of voices saying that they want performance bumps, and there is, you know, a reason to want to get a performance bump like that in consistency. But as far as Nintendo side of things go, and, you know, keeping sales going, it doesn't matter. You know, it really isn't. That's not what determines sales at large, right?
I always say tech isn't interesting when it's new. Tech is interesting when it's cheap. Yeah. Because that's when it starts to creep into the average user thing. It's about whether, you know, if you're looking at the technology, you know, if you're looking at what is possible and what do the gamers want, right? The answer is easy, and that's simple, and that's just more powerful system that can run all my games better, just better hardware, better system.
Yeah.
The hardcore gamer would be like, well, you know, I'll buy a high-end, you know, I'll buy a Switch that can run 1080p 60 for $500. Like, duh, of course, that's a no-brainer. But, you know, we got to remember that we're a teeny slice. The thing to consider is not what's the coolest thing they can do.
It's the thing that's going to sell.
What's the thing that's going to create the install base that is the most appealing for developers to do that? Because I think the real appeal of the Switch isn't just that it's a super powerful console. I think that the real appeal of it is stuff, you know, when we've seen a bunch of indie stuff and seeing previous gen stuff that's ported over.
Yeah. In your own mind, at least, do you see them doing a spec model down the line? Do you think that, like, this is it for now and we're just going to do a freaking Gen 2 Switch 3 years from now? I mean, like, just what do you think? Yeah, with Nintendo, it's never really that predictable, clearly.
It's not predictable at all.
Yeah.
They'll just do whatever they feel like. And, you know, it's funny and a little frustrating because literally in my reaction video that I filmed right after it was revealed and uploaded just hours later, at the end of the video, I said it's going to be a matter of days before we go back to wondering about the Switch Pro and the Switch 4K. Like, this solves nothing. This is just a little exciting thing for now. People are going to be over it in a week, and we're going to go right back to what most people actually want. And that's exactly where we are. We're here a week later, and you're asking me, what about the 4K Switch? And, you know, there's a part of me that's just so done because I don't know. I don't know anymore. Like, I don't know with Nintendo. I think it's dumb that they haven't already done it. But now we have this. So, bare minimum, they have to wait another year before they can put out another new model. That's bare minimum. And I would even say like a year or two is like after releasing something that costs more before you can put out something again. But at that point, we're getting what? 7, 8 years into the Switch's lifespan? We don't need a revision at that point. We need a new thing at that point.
Yeah.
So I don't even know. I don't know, man. Maybe they come out with one at the end of the year. Yeah. But it just seems ridiculous at this point.
I think the next console that Nintendo makes is going to be a type of Switch. It's going to be a hybrid console because it's done so well for them already. That won't be for at least 2 years.
Yeah.
At least in my mind. I think there is zero chance that there's a 4K Switch Pro coming out next year or within the next few months.
I think for half, I think if we got an up-gen, it wouldn't be as big as like a PS4 Pro, where it's like a half.
It's not a half.
I think it would, if I were to guess, I think it would be closer to a 3DS, where it's, I would lean more towards no significant hardware change as to not fragment the install base, which is their thing, because their main appeal isn't the power, it's the install base. Right. So I think instead they would, I think that's more likely that they don't do that, but if they did, I think it would be a small upgrade to help with like frame rates and stuff like that. It's not going to make Breath of the Wild go to 60, but it might make it run at
a stable 30.
Yeah. So I think if they did something in the future that was, I think if before they did a Switch version 2, you know, the successor like the DS to the 3DS, I think if they did something, it would be it would not be a 4K thing, and if it was 4K, I think it would be some sort of just upscaling.
So that's how we're all feeling right now. Thanks again to Shank, Bob, and Beat'emups for working with me on this video. If you guys aren't familiar with any of them, make sure to check out their channels. It's all awesome content, and I will see you guys later.